Good evening. My name is Stan Harris, and I'm here today to talk to you about voting. But before we start that, I would like everyone to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Reagan.
Hi, I'm Alasia.
Excuse me.
Hi, Cynthia.
Does anyone know what this is?
Yeah, I do.
Yes, you're right there.
A card.
You are correct. It is a voter notification card, and this is the actual card that you need to vote in today's election. With the elections coming up in a few months, there has been continuous media clips of campaigning, so which has voting fresh on our mind. Some feel as their vote does not count, but let me help you understand the importance of using your vote as your voice and why you need to vote in this upcoming election. The United States was founded as an experiment in the 1800s, and in which was understood that only white men with property would vote, since they were the only people who could be trusted to vote with the community in mind and not their own private gain. Well, in 1859, something altogether different went down. The voting was still public, but all white men came out to vote, and nearly 70% of them managed to do so in that congressional elections that year. With pistols and fisticuffs notwithstanding. So let me tell you about a story about George Kyle. He was a merchant from Baltimore who in 1859 left his home to cast his ballot, and he left home with that ballot in his hand. Someone tried to snatch his ballot, but he dodged and fight, but later was hit and struck down to the ground. While laying down on the ground, he heard his brother crying behind him. So he drew his knife, but he never had a chance to use it as a pistol was stuck to his head. Being glazed by a bullet, he rose and he ran. He never got to cast his ballot that day, and neither did his brother. The Democratic candidate for Congress, William Harris, lost. The American Party, Henry Winter Davis, won that election that year. In 1889, Americans were killed. There were 89 Americans killed at the polls that day during the Election Day riots of 1859. That was a very dramatic scene. But it goes to show you the impact that voting has had and how we must still honor those who have passed away. Also, we could take a look at women. In 1965, we have to look at the Women's Suffrage Act. And this is basically where there was an act to allow women to vote state by state. Wyoming was actually the first state to allow women to vote, And we also have to look at, when you talk about women voting, we also have to look at who played an important part of it. Was also a lady by the name of Susan B. Anthony. Now, Susan B. Anthony was an American feminist. She was an American feminist who wanted women to be able to vote, as well as ex-slaves. She went to the polls in Rochester, New York in 1872, along with 12 other women to vote. 2 weeks after that election, her 12 friends and 3 of the election inspectors was arrested. We all know of the recent struggles that have happened in the African American community at recent voting polls, having to wait in lines all day and all night just to cast their votes. Many being turned away from polls just because they don't have driver license or sufficient identification. You can look at you can look at the Navy vet, Willie Stern. Now, Willie Stern was a Navy vet in 2000 who went in the 2000 Florida state elections. He went to cast his vote. He had young children in his hand, but he was turned away because he was a convicted felon. But only to learn out later on that day that there was a misidentity, and he was mistaken for Willie O'Sheen, who was actually a convicted felon. What happened to Willie was unfortunate, but it is exactly why we need to vote to hold officials accountable and make sure that we're putting officials in place to protect our voting rights. And thank you. Now at this time, any questions?
Yes.
Any questions?
What about the long lines?
Well, they're trying to help the long lines out in voting. So there has been, a lot of states do participate in early voting. So, a lot of states you can vote to up to 2 to 3 weeks earlier than the actual voting day.
Okay.
So that helps shorten down on lines.
Okay.
And so why you say again it's important to vote?
It's important to vote. Not only have a lot of Americans passed away and really fought hard for voting rights, but also it's important because you want to make sure that we're holding officials accountable. Every vote matters and every vote counts.
All right.
Any other questions?
Question? I need a
Yes.
question.